President, Denmark condemns this violation of Polish sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is a dangerous and reckless escalation that is completely unacceptable and deeply concerning. Our resolve to stand by our allies remains firm. Together with our EU partners and NATO allies, we will continue to offer support to Poland in protecting its borders. Let there be no doubt, Denmark fully supports the territorial integrity of all countries in line with the UN Charter. Mr. President, the violation of Polish airspace by Russian drones has taken place in the midst of relentless Russian drone attacks in Ukraine. Russian drones are being used to terrorize the people of Ukraine. They're responsible for countless casualties in cities and on the front line, and increasingly bringing death, destruction, and misery to the civilian population of Ukraine. The Russian military-industrial complex has been scaled up dramatically to produce drones in huge quantities. They're becoming a serious threat not only to Ukraine, but to all countries bordering Russia. The incursions into Poland's airspace took place less than a day after a massive air attack in Ukraine, where at least 24 elderly civilians were killed while simply waiting outside to collect their monthly pension. It took place 3 days after the single largest Russian aerial attacks on Ukraine's cities during the war, where 4 civilians were killed and 44 wounded, including many children. And it took place 1 week after the drone and missile blitz in Kyiv, killing 25, including 4 children. These never-ending violations of international law, these aggressions, will only reinforce our determination to continue supporting Ukraine with what it needs to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, to exercise its inherent right to self-defense in the face of Russia's unprovoked and illegal full-scale invasion. We've said it many times, there is a simple alternative, a simple solution. Just one man in the Kremlin could decide to stop his armed forces attacking Ukraine. Unfortunately, Russia's leader appears to have chosen to prolong this war of conquest and to continue down the path of death, destruction, and misery. Mr. President, what we have witnessed over the skies over Poland is a reminder that Russia's drone surge is not by any means restricted to the war of aggression in Ukraine. And this violation of Polish airspace is not only the most recent Russian violation of the airspace of its neighbors. It is also a reminder that Russia's war of aggression poses an inherent threat to international peace and stability. It undermines the fundamentals of international law that we all benefit from. This is why we urge Russia to change its course, to opt for peace, to respect the territorial integrity of its neighbors. Until Russia changes course, we'll continue to increase the costs for Russia and its enablers. I thank you.
I thank the
Russian military drones violated the airspace of Poland, a NATO member. The United States stands by our NATO allies in the face of these alarming airspace violations. The United States is consulting with Poland and our other NATO allies under Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. And rest assured, we will defend every inch of NATO territory. This incident does not help the extraordinary efforts that the United States has undertaken in recent weeks to broker an end to the war. Since the Alaska summit between President Trump and President Putin on August 15th, Russia has intensified its bombing campaign against Ukraine, resulting in loss of life and damage to civilian infrastructure. These actions, now with the addition of violating the airspace of a U.S. ally, intentionally or otherwise, show immense disrespect for good faith U.S. efforts to bring an end to this conflict. We urge Russia to renew and live up to its commitment to diplomacy by seeking an immediate end to hostilities through direct negotiations with Ukraine. Colleagues, the Russia-Ukraine war needs to end. We cannot risk it escalating into a broader conflict. Russia must demonstrate its seriousness by taking immediate, concrete steps toward peace. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement.
Not only did we receive reports of yet another Russian attack on Ukraine, but also of an egregious violation of Polish and NATO airspace by Russian drones. This was not the first time Russian drones have violated Polish airspace, but this latest incident was unprecedented in scale. Around 20 drones entered Polish territory, prompting the closure of major airports. Several required interception for the first time by Polish and NATO air defence. Shelter-in-place warnings were issued to over 8 million Polish citizens. It is very fortunate that there were no casualties, unlike last time. We commend the swift and effective response by Polish and NATO forces against this gross violation of Poland's sovereign airspace. The United Kingdom stands in full solidarity with Poland and with Ukraine. We will continue to work with our NATO allies to defend every inch of Allied territory. Russia's aggression only strengthens the unity between NATO nations and our determination to stand with Ukraine. As my Prime Minister said, this was an extremely reckless move by Russia. It serves to remind us of President Putin's blatant disregard for peace, of the constant bombardment innocent Ukrainians face every day, and the threat that Russia's actions pose to European and international security. Russia continues to violate the basic principles of the UN Charter. Open source imagery of these incursions confirms the United Kingdom's own assessment. These were Russian drones. We categorically reject Russia's denials and attempts to diminish the seriousness of this incident. Since the start of Russia's so-called special military operation, we keep seeing what Russia describes as isolated incidents. Representatives of the Russian Federation have repeatedly, and as recently as yesterday, said in this Council that we should call a spade a spade. So let me do just that. This was no isolated incident. In 2022, we saw hundreds of civilians killed in Russia's attacks on Bucha and Irpin. Last year, I spoke in this Council about Russia's cowardly attack on a children's hospital in Kyiv. Since May of this year, we have witnessed the 20 largest air attacks of the entire war. We've witnessed 34,000 drones launched against Ukrainian civilians this year alone. We've seen 1,700 Ukrainians killed and over 8,300 injured. There's been a threefold increase in the number of child casualties in the last 3 months alone. Government buildings have been struck. There have been relentless attacks on critical national infrastructure. This is all part of a clear pattern of escalation. And these actions shake the foundations of international peace and security, and they show Putin for what he truly is. But we are not intimidated, and we are determined to increase the pressure on Putin. Today, on her visit to Kyiv, my Foreign Secretary announced 100 new sanctions targeting Russia's military sector and shadow fleet. And NATO has confirmed it will launch Operation Eastern Sentry to bolster our defences on the eastern flank. President, we call on Russia to end its brutal and illegal war and engage in meaningful negotiations. I thank you.
EU airspace, NATO airspace. Polish, Italian and Dutch fighter aircraft succeeded in tracking and shooting down Russian drones over Poland. Benelux countries stand in solidarity with our Polish allies, and we remain ready to provide any further support. We condemn this violation of Polish airspace in the strongest possible terms. It is a reckless and dangerous act by the Russian Federation, risking further escalation. In doing so, Russia is violating the UN Charter and threatening the security of innocent citizens, regional stability, and international peace and security. This was not an isolated incident and cannot be ignored. This incident demonstrates that if Russia's aggression remains unchecked, it is bound to repeat itself. It also demonstrates Ukrainian and European security are closely interlinked. The actions by the Russian Federation have only strengthened our resolve. Benelux countries will continue to pursue coordinated military, humanitarian and budget support to Ukraine in order to bolster its efforts to defend itself and rebuild the country. Benelux countries call upon all countries to actively support Ukraine in its fight to survive. Because it's not just about Ukraine or about Europe. We need to show that we take a stand against violations of internationally recognized borders and that we will protect the UN Charter. Aggression cannot become the new norm. This affects us all. We call upon the Russian Federation to fully comply with international law and the Charter, especially given its status as permanent member of this Council. Russia needs to stop its illegal aggression against Ukraine and its reckless behavior against Europe. The Russian Federation must demonstrate genuine political will to end its war of aggression and engage in constructive and meaningful negotiations. Benelux countries call on this Council to take tangible steps towards a full, unconditional and immediate ceasefire, so these incidents cannot repeat themselves. We will continue our active contribution to all efforts, bringing a comprehensive, just and lasting peace closer. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands for the statement.